Hey folks, it's Brian here, the Land Guy. You are in for a treat today because guess what we're going to be doing? We are going to be digging some test holes for a future pond build. I went on site a couple of weeks ago, looked at the location. It's in a beautiful area, a beautiful place on this 40-acre property, and the landowner is desiring a ½ acre in size. But first, I told him, and just like I'm going to tell you all, we got to dig test holes to make sure we got the right soil composition to support a ½ acre pond build, because clay is super important. And if there's no clay, then there's no pond. All right, well, hang tight. We're going to be leaving and going down here and hooking up to our trailer. Got the trailer all hooked up here. I need to clean off that snow because when that trailer is tilted up and you're trying to load a rubber track piece of equipment, man, it wants to slide all over the place. But we're going to be heading up to a little rental place not far from here and not far from where we're going to be digging the test holes, because we have to use an excavator, and they just so happen to have a Kubota KX40 that we're going to be running. I've used Kubota skid steers, never ran the Kubota excavators before, so maybe I'm in for a surprise. I'm not for sure, but I'm just going to need it for a few hours so we can see what these test holes consist of. I'm about to pull in here to the local rental yard, and I just want to say these guys are really great to work with. Dave, the owner, and his crew are super kind, and they're always out there helping me boom and chain down the equipment. I'm going to pull around the building here, and we're going to get that excavator loaded up before we head out to do those test holes. Well, we have arrived, and I'm going to back in there to this entrance. That's where we're going to be going. You folks get to see how good of a backer I am. Let's see if we can do this. Oh yeah. Some of these properties, it's a lot easier to back in than to pull forward and get in there and then try to figure out how to get turned around. We'll back up there to that gate. Oh yeah. Smooth as butter. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get things untied and get this dude loaded, and we got to track it across the field for a ways. And well, we are tracking out here across this field. This is a beautiful property. There's 40 acres here that this landowner owns, and he's got some beef cows out here. And I'll turn around and show you just a little bit about the view on the way to the pond build site. Evidently that cow didn't like me. They see this big orange thing coming across the field, and they're a little curious and spooked at the same time, which I don't blame them. They probably think this thing looks like a big dinosaur coming through the field. Especially if I move that arm up and down, they would take off running. Well, we just got that dude parked down here taking a look at this, and I'll kind of explain to you the layout of the pond, and then I'll kind of let you know where we're going to be digging these test holes And in the process of it, I'm going to tell you some things that we're going to be looking for when we're doing that. So the initial idea was to build a pond dam from right up there down through here, and this up through there would actually be the pond. And we got all that drainage up through there that's going to be able to come down and feed the pond. The idea also is we're not going to be disturbing any of these trees here. So once you get past the trees, that's where the pond is going to be built, coming up through there. And the way this is going to be laid out here is there's going to be a lot of material that's going to have to be stockpiled. And we're going to be able to stockpile piles up there. We're kind of curious today if we're going to have lots of topsoil, curious how deep that topsoil is going to be before we get down to some clay. So I've got my tripod set up here. We're going to get started on digging. The goal is we're going to be digging where this pond dam is going to be built, because it's very important to have a keyway underneath the pond dam. So this through here is actually going to be pretty deep. So we're going to come up here and we're going to dig some test holes through there and there, probably a total of around 6. And you see these piles here. I think the landowner came out here the other day out of curiosity to see what his soil was. He's got a skid steer, it looked like, or a tractor with a front bucket, and he dug a couple holes, maybe a couple feet deep. All right, y'all been kind of following along with the time-lapse video, but we have dug 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes. And you've noticed whenever we built it is we made 2 piles. We put 1 pile on the right, 1 pile on the left. Well, the pile on the right is topsoil. And like this hole here, there was about 1 foot of topsoil before you got to the good clay. And then there's about 4 foot of clay, which I stacked the good stuff here, and there's not a rock in it at all. It's crazy. The topsoil didn't have no rock. That first portion of clay didn't have no rock, but then you got down and I hit crazy hard pan. And you can see here the rock. It's got a little bit of clay mixed in it, but there's a lot of rock. I don't like to see that. I was really hoping that I had a lot more depth in clay, but I got down to where it's really rocky. And the same thing here. I've got topsoil on the right, good clay up here on this side, and then down here got into that rocky stuff. I mean, you can see some of the rocks that came out of that hole down there. But this hole here, 1 foot of topsoil, 4 foot, so I've got about a 5 foot hole there, almost 6. Same thing there, but if you go up there, you can see that I didn't get to go very deep at all. There was about 1 foot of topsoil there, which I stacked over on this side. And then that clay started, and there was only about 3 foot of clay before I got into that rock. And you can see that rock in there, and you can look how rocky that is. I just hammered and hammered and hammered away at that, trying to dig that up with that excavator. The excavator did a fine job, but that hard pan's really hard. But this clay, I mean, this is awesome stuff. Look at this. I mean, it sticks to your finger. You can form it up into hamburger patties. You can't get any better than that when you're building a pond. So I've got some different options here to kind of present to the landowner. Not really sure what direction he's wanting to go on, because we was hoping to make a pretty deep pond here, not only for his cattle, but he thought if it was deep enough, we might be able to throw some fish in here too. So, not for sure. All right, I went ahead and got 9 test holes dug here at this proposed pond location. We've got some there. Pretty much wherever this pond was marked out to be this half-acre size is where I dug test holes. I was wanting to make sure everything was pretty much consistent with what I had previously marked out. And it is. We've got lots of good clay down here in this area where we're going to be building the pond dam. It's going to be 150 foot long was the plan. But as I went up further that way, it got more rockier, which that was going to be more of the shallow end. But I want to see what the soil consistency was, because that is super important. I went ahead and just called the landowner and told them my findings about the rock. Because if you remember, I was able to get down about 5 to 6 foot, and then I run into this solid rock, and even that one right up there got into a ledge that I know is very solid. But I told the landowner, I think what we can do is we can still go ahead and build a pond like we were talking about. We've got lots of good soil here, lots of good clay. I think I might just have a hard time reaching that desired depth of 10 foot because of the solid rock that I hit down about 6 foot. I said, what I can do is I'll be bringing out a dozer that has a large set of rippers, a large dozer. And the plan is I get all the topsoil moved out of the way. I can get all the clay moved out to the way. And then I can also build the pond dam with this clay. But I will save some clay to be able to line the pond once we're done. The purpose of that is I'm going to use those rippers to rip out as much rock as I can to get that desired depth that we want. And I know it's going to be pretty solid, and that's why those rippers will do a fine job. And I'm going to get all that rock excavated out, and we'll probably end up stockpiling it to the side. And then I'll push all that clay back in that I've got saved, and we'll reline that whole thing at least a foot, if not a foot and a half thick, in compacted lifts to line that whole pond. And hopefully that will work. The landowner is super great to work with, and he completely understands. He said, Brian, he said, actually, on the other side of this 40-acre property, towards the west, he said, I've run into solid rock over there while doing some fence work. So he said, I understand your point here, but he said, I'd really want this pond to happen. And so today was very important that we dug these test holes to see where we're at on it. What I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be taking that blade on that excavator, and I'm going to be pushing in these piles, because the landowner has cattle, and I don't want them cattle to be falling into these holes, because some of these are 5 to 6 foot deep. So I'll get these pushed in. I'll put it on time lapse. You can watch me for a little bit before we end the video. Well, I just got those test holes all pushed in and roughed in. We're going to be coming out here with a dozer here in a few days, so I'm not really too concerned about how they look, because this is going to be a disaster area when we get started with this pond build. Anyway, I hope that you got something good today from the video. It is my desire to make sure that we stay informed and educated on the pond building process. There's actually a lot that goes into pond building, and test holes is just your first initial step. So they are very important. If you've got a pond that you're wanting to get built, make sure whoever you hire goes out and does test holes. That way he can properly understand what's underneath the soil. We don't necessarily know what's under our feet. Now, there's been times I've dug test holes and it proved to be no clay at all, and it was just topsoil and rock. And you don't want to spend all your money on something that's not going to hold water. So make sure you do your homework on these pond test holes, and make sure you hire a contractor that's a pond builder. not just a dirt pusher. There's a lot of difference between just pushing up dirt and calling it a pond, or if you come out and you actually construct one, because it is an artwork. There is a process to building a pond properly. So I hope that you got a lot out of the video today. I appreciate you watching, and stay tuned. We're going to be showing this pond build when we get started.